Today, we are going to talk about branding and how to make sure that yours is sending all the right messages and how to fix it if it's not. So, it's important to remember that your brand is more than the colors and the fonts that you choose. So, your brand is actually how your business is perceived by those who experience it. To build your brand, you want to make sure that every interaction from your websites to your social media to your customer service to your packaging is all aligned with the brand message that you want to communicate. But for the purpose of this video today, we're going to focus on branding as it relates to your brand kit. So your logos, your fonts, and your colors, and maybe what messages you might be sending unintentionally and how to create more impactful branding that will reach your ideal clients. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you're just starting out, a couple of quick tips for you. If you're just starting out and you're still nailing down your name, let me give you a few tips before we move on to the branding tips. The name of your business is what's going to give your clients, your competitors, your investors, your employees the first impression of who you are and what you do. So to say that it's important is certainly an understatement. And there's a lot of factors that you want to keep in mind when you're choosing your business name. So the name you choose should be easy to remember. It should appeal to your target audience, but there's also practical concerns as well that are going to save you from maybe legal or operational challenges down the road. So you want to search for the availability of web domains that match your name, as well as social media handles. And that's also a great way to find out who else who else is out there using a similar name and whether they're in the same field as you are. You want to stay away from hard to spell names because if somebody hears it, you want them to be able to know how to find you on the web. Like, for example, if you think of Lyft now, they're big enough now that it's not a problem. But Lyft, if you heard that, you would think Lift probably, right? And it's Lyft, and you'd be searching and you wouldn't be able to find them. So think about that when you're choosing your name, whether it's going to be easy to find you or if it's going to be hard to spell. Definitely want to search the internet for other businesses with the same name and analyze whether they're going to be harmful to your business as you grow and market it, whether they're in the same field as you or not. Is it something that, maybe you are marketing to families and it's something that's more adults? And even if you're not competing, do you want to be associated with that? Is that going to hurt you down the road? So really have a look at that and search the internet to see what other businesses have the same name. And really conduct a full trademark search. Even if you're not trademarking right away, again, that's going to tell you how popular that name is, how common it is, what other companies are using a similar name to that. Another pro tip for you here, you want to work out the potential shortenings of the name and any acronyms that other people might use. I'll give you an example. Let's say you had, I don't know, a car insurance company and you wanted to call it the Auto Standards Society. Now that sounds fine. That's a great name, Auto Standards Society. But as your customers naturally try to shorten that long name, your company becomes ASS, which is significantly less fine. So think about it. It's just like naming a baby, right? You think about all the nicknames they could have. Same thing with your company. You want to work out all of those potentials so that you don't end up with something awkward down the road. The last step of picking your name, this is the last thing I'm going to say about names, is to take some options that you have and test them with your network as well as people that would fit in your target audience. Because just because it means a certain thing to you or sounds a certain way to you doesn't mean that everyone's going to have the same impression. So feedback is really critical to your final decision. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I was naming a jewelry brand that I was working on for a client, and the brand was focused on a rainbow gemstone. And the big selling feature of the stone was that it's prized for bringing good fortune to its wearer. So I liked the name Karma. I thought it had the right feel. And if it had just been me involved in it, I probably would have run with that as the name. But I pitched it to our marketing manager and he thought it was ridiculous. He wanted to know why I would give such a beautiful stone such a negative name. And I was so confused because to me, karma was not negative at all, but to him, karma was negative, like karma's going to get you. So neither of us is right or wrong. The key here is that it's perception. And if it was his perception that it was negative, it was likely the perception of many other people as well. So it wasn't a good choice for the name. So we moved on to other options. But it's really important to test that name out and make sure that everybody has, or everybody in your target audience anyway has the right perception of what that name might mean. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say about names. So moving on, we're going to talk about a few things here. The first one we're going to talk about is your logo. So your logo is like the dating profile picture for your brand. People are going to make assumptions about your brand within seconds of seeing your logo. So it's important to get it right. So there's some key points that you want to keep in mind when you're designing your logo. Number one is the shape. So the shape your logo has plays a big role in how people interpret it, even unconsciously. Studies show that the overall shape of your logo, whether it's circular shaped or more angular, is going to influence how people perceive your brand. So, shapes that are more angular tend to be associated more with harder, more durable features, things like power, innovation, respect. More curved and organic shapes bring to mind softer traits like kindness, warmth, friendliness. So, think about the overall feel that you want your logo to have and then what shape communicates that the best. Number two tip for your logo is to keep it simple. I cannot stress this enough. We all want to jam all the things into our logo that we've ever done, we're thinking of doing, every design that possibly makes sense. And the brain cannot understand all of that information you're putting in. They will just look away. So you want to keep it simple. You want to make sure that it's simple, it's easy to understand at a glance. And your logo also needs to work in various sizes. So the simpler it is, the clearer it's going to be when you reduce it to a tiny size. If you think about the favicon, which is the little tiny, tiny logo when you open a tab on your web browser, it's teeny, teeny, tiny, right? So now not all logos are even going to go that small, even good logos, but the smaller it gets, the simpler it needs to be so that it still is readable and usable. So keep it simple. Number three tip for your logo is the color. First of all, I'm going to talk about not color. First of all, you want to make sure that your logo works in black and white. The reason you want to make sure that it works in black and white, two very important reasons. One, your logo needs to have a strong design foundation. So if it works without the color, it will work with it. But the opposite isn't always true. You're also going to need to use it in one color at some point. You may most of the time use it digitally, and most of the time you can use it in full color, but there are going to be times where you have to have a one color logo. And some logos are just not designed with that in mind and they don't convert to one color. So you're going to lose your shading, any colors that overlap are suddenly not going to make sense in one color. So make sure that the logo design that you come up with works in black and white, and then you can choose your colors for it. All right, that's number three. And number four is get feedback. Again, you're going to hear me say this over and over again, but it's really important to get your final logo choices in front of as many eyes as you can for feedback, because visual interpretation is subjective. And everyone is going to see a logo and interpret its meaning a bit differently. So it's really important to get others to look at it and make sure that it's really getting across the message that you intended and it doesn't have a meaning that you're not aware of yourself. Okay, so get some feedback. And the last note on this one is to have some options. So as far as the files go, so when you finalize your logo, you come up with a design that you love, make sure you get all the versions of the file you need, meaning that you want to have that one color version that you can use when you need to have a one color version of your logo. So that means a solid color, no, gradient changes, no shadows. Those things are not included in a one color logo. Then you want to have your full color version of whatever colors that you have chosen, and make sure that you have a version that's going to work on dark backgrounds as well as light backgrounds. So for example, if you're not sure what I mean, if you have a look at our site, so go to shecorporated.com, you'll see our circle logo, the She Corporated logo, or on our social media. The body of the logo is a yellow circle. And then the text on our main logo around the outside where it says corporated is a dark gray, right? That looks great on a light colored background. But when we try and use it on a black or a gray background, you lose that corporated. It disappears into that dark background. So we have an alternate version of our logo that has the yellow circle, and then that gray text around the outside is white instead. And then we can use that on the dark colored backgrounds. So you want to think through this and make sure you have all of the versions of your logo that you're going to need to work through various applications and uses. Now, how do you get your logo designed? Well, a million different ways, but you may decide to design it yourself. You may decide to work with a professional. For something this important, it is a good idea to have your designer at least make up the final file at the very least. But you do want to go in with a pretty clear picture of what you're looking for. It's a great idea to play around with some sketches yourself first, or maybe use Canva, a design tool like that, to kind of work through preliminary ideas to see what you like and you don't like. And then you have those preliminary drawings to get you started with the designer. And that's going to save you a lot of back and forth. And with designers, of course, time is money. You can work with a designer offline, locally, or somebody that you know, somebody you've worked with before. You can find people on places like Fiverr or 99 Designs. There's all sorts of designers out there, but you definitely want to go in with some idea of what you're looking for, because, like I said, time is money with a designer. So, and you're more likely to get what you want as well if you have some concept going in. So once you have your approved final logo, you've decided the design, you've figured out all of the variations of it that you need. The last step is to make sure that you get the final files in a few different file types. And this is a key one. And if you haven't worked in design before, this is important. If you have a good designer, they should give you this anyway, but I've had a lot of people not offer up these files. So you want to make sure the top three things I would say you want to make sure you have. One is the original vector logo. And what that means is that it is the editable original file. So if you want to go back later and you want to have somebody change colors, you can send them that file and they can just go in and very quickly change it because it's editable. If you don't have that original vector file, you don't have your logo file. Really, you have a picture of your logo file. So when you get your files from your designer, you want the original vector logo. You want a PNG file with a transparent background. So what that means is it's going to be great for like websites or like, designing things. You're going to be able to put it into your site builder, and you're not going to have that white box around it because the background is transparent. So that's something like a PNG file with a transparent background. And then a lot of people will have things like a JPEG or something like that. That you can use for various applications as well, especially web-based ones. So, but do make sure you have your original vector file of all things, because you can create all of the other files from that original vector file, and you cannot create that original vector file from anything else. So that's really the most important one if you're only going to ask for one. Okay, if you have any questions on logos or anything that I just said, just pop it in the comments and I will circle back and answer those for you. So step number 2 is to choose your fonts. So different typefaces have different personalities. Each one conveys a certain feeling, which is why it's important to choose the right one for your brand identity. So most brands will choose 2 to 3 typefaces as part of their brand identity kit. So you want to make sure that it's different from the typeface that your competitors use. It feels unique to your brand. You also want to make sure that all the typefaces that you choose, because you may have 2 or 3 that you use on a regular basis, make sure they work together in a complementary fashion and they all have the right feel. The other thing that's really important, no matter how pretty that font is or how much you love it, it's got to be readable. It's got to be functional. So make sure that the fonts you choose not only line up with your brand feel, but they're easy to read, that they join up together nicely, and they work well with the words that you use a lot. I'll give you an example. We chose a font for one of the brands that I worked with, and this was a script font, and the R's in it were really odd. They looked very strange. They didn't really join up together. And in my name, there's a lot of R's, and we used it as our signature on our emails. And every time I saw it, it drove me crazy because it looked really strange and disjointed. So we eventually actually had to change that font because there was really no way to make it look any different. We tried editing it, and it still looked funny. So you want to take the words that you use a lot, like your company name, your tagline, all of that, and test it in those fonts and make sure that it looks good. It all joins up. And you like the look and you like the feel of it. So, and make sure it looks good in multiple applications. All right, step 3, choose your colors. Color is such a powerful tool, and it's important, an important part of your branding. Let me close this. I'm getting dings and bings here. Hang on one second. Somebody's texting me. So different colors, this is a great one. And it's a lot of fun too. Different colors are going to create different responses in people. And they're also going to reinforce the messaging about your overall brand. So for example, and if you haven't looked at this before, you're going to be like, oh man, that's true. The color orange and yellow and red, they're associated with hunger and energy. And if you think about the companies that use it a lot, it makes sense. So you think about fast food restaurants, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, KFC, Wendy's, all in the oranges and the yellows and the reds. Why? Speed and hunger. They want you in the door, they want you to eat, and they want you out. So it's not a coincidence. They choose these colors intentionally. You think about blue. Blue can be very soothing and calming. And if you think about the companies that use a lot of blue, you'll often see it in medical or therapeutic settings, resorts, spas. So when you're trying to communicate information about your brand, if you use color effectively, you can amplify the intended message, and you can hopefully compel people to take the action that you want. If you Google color theory, you're going to find all sorts of charts and resources that will help you figure out what colors evoke the right feeling for your brand. So just go into Google and put in color theory, and you'll get tons of resources that you can have a look at. But when you're choosing your colors, it's also important to consider who you're targeting and what colors are going to appeal to them, and consider what colors your competitors use. So you can choose something that's going to help you stand out as well. So How do you choose your brand colors? You want to start with a color inspiration. You can use a color tool, photograph, paint chips, even a Pinterest board. You want to make sure you have a mix of light and dark colors in your palette because you're going to need both. You want to identify which are your dominant colors. So which are the ones you're going to use all the time, probably in your logo and on your website and that sort of thing. And then have some accent colors that work with those that you can use on a more limited basis. And you want to make sure that you have your colors listed in different codes. So if you're using a web application, if you're using something like Canva, or if you're building a website, the code that tells the site what your color is a hex code, and it's a certain number, and that's for digital colors like that. If you're printing your logo on a mug, for example, if you're actually a printing press is physically printing ink on something, then you're going to need a PMS or a Pantone matching system code to get the color right. This is really important because a lot of brands will say, okay, well, my color is this, it's a nice bright yellow. Okay, it's a nice bright yellow, but which bright yellow is it? Because there's hundreds. And you want to keep it consistent with every single thing that you do. Every time you print something, every time you pick a color on a website, you want to be picking the same yellow because they're all different, right? So if you have a yellow that you've chosen in something like Canvas, you can actually, in Canva, you can actually go in and see what the hex code is, and you can just copy that. And you're going to put that in your brand kit so that you know that that is your yellow. And then anytime you build on any other platform, you can get exactly the same yellow. And it's the same principle with the PMS code. So if you have one color or the other chosen, either the hex code or the PMS, then you can actually go to a tool. It's called, and I'm going to post it in, and this is a lot of technical information. So if you got questions, you can post them and I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to post this link in, you're welcome, Cheryl. I hope it's helpful. And I'm going to come back and answer some of these questions if we got time. I've got so much information to get, but we might run out of time, but I will come back in the comments. So I just posted it. It's Encyclopedia, Encyclopedia. And if you've gone into Canva and you found a color and you've copied the hex code, you can actually go straight to this website. You can put it in and it will give you the PMS code. And those are all the things that you want to put in your brand kit so that later on, when you want to print a t-shirt or you want to print a brochure or whatever, you've got all of the variations that you need. Okay. I can answer questions in the comments about that. I know that's kind of tricky. All right, so that's going to be something that you're going to share with your designer as well, is your brand kit. So all of these things that we've talked about, your fonts, your logo variations, and your colors, you're going to put those in your brand kit. And we have got a brand, I'm going to give it to you right now. I'm going to pop it in the comments. We built a template for you in Canva. I know most of you use Canva, so that's the kind of the best place to put it. And it's going to show you exactly how you can lay out your brand kit. We did it using our logo so that you've got an example, and you can just delete that and put your own logo in there so that it makes sense for you. I've also got a link here to the brand kits for major companies. I'm going to put in here as well. Once you see this, it makes it a little easier to understand. So I'm going to pop this in here. And all of these things, all of these links that I'm putting in here, I will also link under the post as well, so that you can see this if you're watching it on the replay. It will all be there. But the one I just put in, it has 50 style guides, 50 branding kits for companies like Heineken, Google, Walmart, and it shows you exactly how the brand guidelines are laid out, and it will help you make sense of what should be in there. Now, don't get overwhelmed. You do not need a brand guide as long as Heineken, Google, or Walmart's brand guides. Okay, theirs are very detailed, but it's going to give you an idea because you're familiar with their brands. As soon as you see, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I never noticed that before. Yes, there is a space around the logo every time it's used. It's never really close to something else. That's not an accident. That's intentional, and it's in their brand guidelines. Okay, so have a look at that, and that will help walk you through it.